Yesterday, I received an email from Act Blue, the Democratic Party campaign donation website, asking me to share my story with them as a small dollar donor and voter. And so I sent them the following message. Dear friends and esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, my story, inasmuch as concerns my donations to the Democratic Party, hereafter referred to as DERPS, candidates in the 2020 electoral cycle, began in 2016. In that election, against the Republican Party, hereafter referred to as HERPS, nominee, Donald Trump, a deeply corrupt, mobbed-up, reactionary pro-war imperialist with narcissistic personality disorder and the attention span of a toddler. The DERPs nominated Hillary Clinton, a deeply corrupt, mobbed-up, reactionary pro-war imperialist with narcissistic personality disorder and the calculating malevolence of Richard Milhous Nixon, who had campaigned on putting the United States on a path to war with Russia. It bears noting that the only way Ms. Clinton was able to win even the DERPS nomination was by means of manipulation and perhaps the outright rigging of the primary vote. In the aftermath of that predictable electoral defeat, rather than take a moment to reflect on one's failure and perhaps begin to adjust one's conduct in order that it may fit within the bounds of human decency, the DERPs embarked upon a chimerical race-baiting narrative that the election was not due to their own failed strategy or their abysmal choice of candidate, but due to manipulation by the Russians. Never mind, of course, that the very manipulation they alleged was that the Russians hacked their servers and revealed to the world that the DNC had manipulated the primary election. This, by the way, has been proven to have been an internal leak, not a hack. The DERPs, in collusion with entrenched bureaucratic cadres within the government, spent years propagating this narrative, going so far as to spuriously impeach the HERP incumbent while ignoring his actual crimes. And even as they railed against Mr. Trump as, and I quote, the most dangerous person in the history of our country, end of quote, congressional DERPs were passing Mr. Trump's legislative agenda. Given this, I had little hope that the DERPs would field a candidate for whom I was willing to vote. I certainly am not going to support a candidate who is as bad as or worse than Mr. Trump. Yet I was pleasantly surprised, as two individuals of honorable character, sound judgment, backbone, and reasonable policy positions entered the race on the DERPs side. Tulsi Gabbard, representative from Hawaii, and Mike Gravel, former senator from Alaska. Now, I am a full-time student in a working-class family. Being of limited means, I do not ordinarily contribute financially to political campaigns. Yet, in the 2020 cycle, the DERPs thought up an interesting idea. The primary would be turned into a media sideshow, and the party's debates, rather than providing an honest platform for all of the DERPs candidates in order that the electorate could choose the best, most qualified, most capable candidate, would be a money-making gimmick. The rule came down that the debates would be exclusionary, with one of the two principal criteria set by the number of donors a candidate obtains. Seeing this for what it was, yet feeling that the candidates whom I was willing to support should have a voice in the debate, I found a room in my budget for a modest donation to each of the two. I would of course be disappointed, which, considering that I speak of the DERPs, is unsurprising. Mr. Gravel, Senator Gravel, despite reaching the donor threshold, was excluded from the second debate. Representative Gabbard, while admitted to a handful of early debates, was excluded from later debates for which she qualified, even as rules were changed in order that a billionaire who bought a place on stage would be permitted to participate. She, when she was not being shut out by the United States media entirely, would be repeatedly and viciously smeared, not by the supposedly intolerant herps, but by the very derps themselves and their affiliated media outlets. The derps would eventually coalesce behind Joe Biden, a deeply corrupt, mobbed-up, reactionary, pro-war imperialist and alleged rapist who is suffering severe cognitive decline as their candidate to challenge the herp incumbent, Donald Trump. Biden's platform, when it was even coherent, would revolve around lies about his opponents and about his abysmal record, along with the message that, and I quote, "nothing will fundamentally change," end of quote. In the aftermath of the DERP's decisions, and in the case of Major Gabbard, Miss Gabbard, Representative Gabbard, the epidemic putting an end to real campaigning, my preferred candidates would withdraw from the race and eventually endorse the party's nominee. While I do understand their reasoning, given that in order to even run in the DERP's primary, one was required to sign a pledge to endorse the eventual nominee, I do not support it. As regards this pledge, I happen to agree with Marcus Tullius Cicero, the grandfather of modern statesmanship, who wrote that a promise which does not serve the greater good ought not be kept. That is in De Officiis, his treatise on moral duty, Book 1, paragraph 32. And make no mistake, a Biden presidency will not be to the greater good. It is true that Trump is a vile individual, with policy positions which will prove ruinous for the people of the United States and for the world. He is the epitome of moral turpitude. But is Biden meaningfully different? On foreign policy, Trump has continued the Bush-Obama wars and the previous administration's policy of coups and sanctions. Biden was a vocal supporter of the wars in Yugoslavia and Iraq, and a part of the administration which launched the wars, be they direct or by proxy, in Libya, Syria, Yemen, the Ukraine, and other places, as well as supporting a coup d'etat in Honduras. On domestic policy, Trump wants to cut and perhaps privatize Medicare and Social Security. Biden has also advocated cutting Medicare and Social Security for much of his career, and has promised even to veto a single-payer health care program should Congress ever get its act together to pass one. As regards immigration, Trump is militarizing the southern border, and his administration is packing migrants, including children, into cages. But Biden also advocated fortification of the southern border, and he was a part of the administration which built those cages. As regards race relations, yes, Trump has used inflammatory rhetoric, and some people close to him do have unsavory ties. Biden, in Congress, actually worked to preserve the last vestiges of racial segregation. Now, I agree with the DERP's critiques that the Trump administration is an atrocity which we Americans have inflicted on ourselves, and that the HERP's ideals are an affront to the moral duties of public office. But that is merely reason to vote against Trump. It is not a reason to vote for Biden. In point of fact, after examining his record, a vote for Biden will not be meaningfully different from a vote for Trump. In point of fact, because they have gone to great lengths to crush the voices for the people within their party, the DERP's ideals, too, are as morally repugnant as those of the HERPs. For if it is not in keeping with moral goodness to vote for the one, nor would it be to vote for the other. While I do not support the presidency of Donald Trump and will not cast a ballot in his favor, neither shall I cast a ballot in favor of Joe Biden. Even were Biden to promise to enact policies which I support, in light of his cognitive decline, I doubt he would even remember them when the time came to deliver. Biden himself has repeatedly counseled voters who question his policy positions to, and I quote, "vote for somebody else," end of quote. I shall take his advice.